Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Tuesday, August 25th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. It's your money, your services, your health. And right now, county leaders are deciding how to spend nearly $6.5 billion. And the pandemic is playing a big part in where that money goes. We'll get to that spending in a minute, but first, new numbers show 5 more COVID-19 deaths, along with 267 new cases countywide. The case rate is 81, just 6 days away now before schools, grades K through 12, could reopen. If we stay under 100 cases per 100,000, that is. KPBS reporter John Carroll now with why some budget priorities have been adjusted in reaction to COVID-19.
Budgets are a statement of values.
With that, Supervisor Nathan Fletcher detailed a number of items he says the county budget should value. With members of unions and other community leaders behind him, Fletcher proposed nearly $50 million in budget amendments, money above and beyond what's already in the budget submitted by county staff. It would instead come from the county's reserves. Fletcher's largest request by far, $24 million for rental assistance, a proposal supported by Board Chairman Greg Cox.
And we need to take immediate action now to help people who are housed stay safe, stay healthy in their homes. We don't want people losing their homes because of the economic impacts of COVID.
Fletcher said he's worried some people aren't getting tested for COVID because they're worried about testing positive and being unable to work. He's proposing $2 million to help those who aren't eligible for existing assistance programs. Fletcher says school districts throughout the county have done a good job making sure students have laptops for remote learning, but they're no good without internet connectivity.
That Chromebook might as well be a brick if it is not connected to the internet.
He's asking for $10 million to help 50,000 low-income families get internet access. Other requests, $5 million for translation services, $5.5 million for behavioral and substance abuse issues among the homeless population. 2/3 of the budget is already committed to health and human services and public safety costs. It's the final third that's really up for debate.
I know there's going to be a lot of money going towards COVID and COVID-related issues.
In a YouTube presentation posted on Monday, Supervisor Jim Desmond laid out a couple of his priorities.
So I'm also putting in road improvements in Valley Center, also in Vista, in Rancho Santa Fe. Also park improvements. I've got as a line item for in the budget for Valley Center.
The supervisors began their budget deliberations at 2 this afternoon. The meeting is expected to last into the evening. Because of COVID, public comment must be given remotely. John Carroll, KPBS News.
San Diego County says it is no longer accepting applications for elementary school waivers. That's because all TK through grade 12 schools will be allowed to reopen on September 1st for in-person classes as long as case rates stay down. The threshold to stay off that state watch list is 100 cases per 100,000 people for 14 days. We are now at that halfway point. Most schools in our county will start the year with remote learning. Coming up, how the pandemic is creating inequity for children just starting their school careers. Preparing for what could be coming, today healthcare workers in the North County demonstrated their support for a bill that would require officials to stockpile personal protective equipment. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman tells us the demonstration was one of nearly a dozen statewide.
In Oceanside, hospital workers are rallying to support a bill that would mandate the state have a stockpile of PPE and require hospitals to also increase their supplies. Healthcare workers say without that, there's deadly consequences. At Tri-City Medical Center today, healthcare workers skipped their lunches, holding a moment of silence for their colleagues lost during the pandemic.
We represent 100,000 workers. We have lost 14 already to COVID-19 due to lack of PPE, and this has been at different hospitals throughout the state.
Staff here say when the pandemic first broke out, no one was ready.
Everybody's scared. No one knows when the supply is going to run out.
Healthcare workers say having a constant supply of clean personal protective equipment is a lifeline for them.
I have my grandson who was born with congenital heart defect, and so was my son-in-law. So if I don't take care of myself here at work and don't have PPEs, I'll take those viruses home or get them sick, and that can be detrimental to them, and that would hurt me so badly.
The Healthcare and Essential Workers Protection Act would require the state to have at least a 3-month supply of clean PPE for both healthcare workers and essential workers. It would also mandate healthcare employers, including clinics, healthcare facilities, and home health agencies, to maintain new unexpired PPE in the event of a state of emergency.
We have to do everything we can to basically outfit them as they're going to war, and that's not something that has been happening.
Now, Tri-City does have a stockpile of PPE, and people here are commending the healthcare system for, they say, stepping up to the plate. But they say it's not this way everywhere.
Our government, our state, who's going to support us when we run out of this stuff? And how are we going to do our jobs and take care of our patients and our community if we don't have PPEs?
Tri-City officials say they will continue to work with healthcare unions like SEIU to make sure there's an adequate supply of PPE. Healthcare workers here say they're tired of lip service, and mandating a stockpile would show them that officials have their backs. In Oceanside, Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services is no longer cutting over 13,000 jobs. The federal agency says revenue from new green card applications ticked back up after a sharp fall at the onset of the coronavirus pandemic. Critics of the planned furlough said it would set back citizenship applications for years and leave thousands of immigrants unable to renew their work authorizations. The head of the agency says it will still need a federal bailout this fall. Changes may be in store for the historic Friendship Park nestled at the westernmost edge between the U.S. and Mexico border. KPBS reporter Tanya Thorne gives us the details.
Deemed the birthplace of the border, Friendship Park has been a historic meeting place for mixed-status families who have been separated from each other. Separated by a rusted metal mesh wall, families were able to reunite on the weekends before COVID restrictions were put into place, forcing the park to close on the U.S. side.
This is looking at Friendship Park from the north to the south. As important as this meeting space is in the world, it is one of the least attractive and oppressive parks I've ever laid eyes on. We're going to remedy that.
Architect James Brown is with a group called Friends of Friendship Park. They've launched a campaign called Build That Park in hopes of designing a binational park between the U.S. and Mexico to encourage unity rather than separation. Brown says part of the design incorporates a retractable fence with Homeland Security supervision, a pedestrian-only border crossing to limit vehicular land disruption, and much more.
Not just a walking pier, but a wide pier, perhaps 100 feet wide, with meeting rooms, conference rooms, restaurants, hotels. This is an active place, not just a grassy field. It's dense with buildings, it's dense with uses, dense with the sharing of ideas and commerce.
The 12-month design phase will include studying other binational parks already in place. San Diego State students will also work on the design of the park. Members of the Build That Park campaign hope their conceptual plan will capture the attention of the public and government officials to one day make it a reality. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
The father of a black man shot multiple times by Wisconsin police says his son may never walk again.
They shot my son 7 times. 7 times. Like he didn't matter. But my son matters.
Jacob Blake is said to be paralyzed from the waist down. The shooting that happened on Sunday in Kenosha, Wisconsin, has sparked new protests over racial injustice. Blake's mother says the destruction caused does not represent her son.
If Jacob knew what was going on as far as that goes, the violence and the destruction, he would be very unpleased.
Wisconsin's governor declared a state of emergency today after businesses were vandalized and set on fire. Police have not said why they opened fire on Blake. Witness video shows he was shot in the back in view of his children. Here in San Diego, about 50 people protested Blake's shooting at San Diego Police Headquarters. SDPD tweeted this photo saying officers warned protesters not to block the entrance and exits. When officers tried to clear the area, police say an officer was hit in the head with a cane and other officers were punched. 3 people were arrested. Progress is being made to contain the massive Northern California wildfires. Better weather and extra crews with bulldozers have helped prevent the fires from spreading. At least 7 people have died and nearly 1,300 homes and other buildings burned. As Laura Hayfley shows us, one home is hit hard in Solano County was spared by the LNU Lightning Complex fire.
Roaring over the ridge, last week's fire barreled towards homes in Solano County, and some homes were saved.
There's that thing called survivor's guilt, right? And I'd always heard about it, and now my wife and I are living it.
But others devastated by the fast-moving flames.
We have several neighbors that have lost everything. We feel horrible. Our property's in great shape. It's unburnt, but everything around it is destroyed.
Mark Van Pelt has spent the last year preparing for what he hoped would never happen.
We spent a lot of time and effort on fire prevention, and it worked. It saved our property.
Including his hens and their coop.
I saw my chickens, and I really started crying because we thought for sure they were gone.
His home surveillance camera catching flames burning right up to his fire break, which includes an irrigation system
designed to soak an area, and it turned that area to mud.
Trimmed trees.
That gets the trees away from the fuel underneath. And then we have a green lawn around our entire house.
Well, it definitely worked in his case for sure.
Battalion Chief Mike Duggan says you can't ever be too prepared.
It's really, I think the biggest thing is defensible space.
But even still, in seconds, you could lose it all. Chief Duggan says it's not easy seeing his district so devastated.
It's very hard. It's very hard.
And that was Laura Hayfley reporting. Across the state, an estimated 170,000 people are under evacuation orders, with thousands of homes still threatened. San Diego ocean temperatures hit record territory this past weekend as a heat wave also baked the region. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says the record comes just weeks after the ocean was unseasonably cool.
Someone has taken the temperature at the end of Scripps Pier every day for more than 100 years. Sunday's reading tied for the hottest on record, 79.5 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a record that was set just 2 years ago. And 2 years before that, a warm water blob kept nearshore temperatures above average for 24 months.
You occasionally get hot spells, you occasionally get cold spells, but the hot spells are getting hotter and hotter as the decades pass.
Oceanographer Art Miller says the average ocean temperature has steadily climbed over the past 100 years, and there's been a marked increase in temperature averages since the 1970s. He says that reduces the food supply for fish that dwell near the shore.
We are seeing all along our coast typically warmer temperatures as the decades pass, and we have to be concerned about that because the stratification of the ocean controls the upwelling of nutrients that feeds the base of the food web along our coast.
Swimmers and surfers may find this weather comfortable, but scientists are looking at it with a little bit of concern. They're interested in the long-term trends and how that impacts the environment. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Our hot, dry conditions continue through the week. Any storms in the mountains would be very few and far between. Not only is it hot here, but it's also humid, and it will continue with the humid conditions for a couple of more days. During the night morning hours, we'll continue to see areas of low clouds and fog. Some of those will move into the western valleys. And a cooling trend starts Friday through the weekend. So there is some light at the end of the tunnel. In the near term, though, we continue with the excessive heat warnings out here in the desert regions. There's also a heat advisory that's in effect, areas to the north through Friday. As we take a look at our temperatures tonight, San Diego 73, El Cajon 71. We'll see some clouds and fog coming into the coastal areas. Borrego Springs 87 tonight, Mount Laguna 65, and Campo 64. For tomorrow, well, it's more the same. High pressure drifting down into Arizona. That'll keep us hot near the coast, a little more comfortable, a little bit more bearable, but it'll be warm and humid. Highs about 85 in Oceanside and 82 in San Diego. Escondido's 94, Ramona 99, and El Cajon 98. Boy, it's hot. And Borrego Springs 115 and Campo 101. Limit your time in the sunshine. Try and make sure you hydrate. Stay inside the AC if you can. Thursday, well, it's a familiar setup, isn't it? No big changes are expected. But by Friday and into the weekend, temperatures will start to come down a couple of notches. Notice we're a little bit humid here. And as we head our way inland, not as hot over the weekend, getting a little bit more tolerable. In the mountain regions, don't see much in the way of storm activity, do we? And temperatures coming down just a touch. And in the deserts, very hot. And temperatures rivaling records for some. And then you can see temperatures coming down just a little bit over the weekend. And for KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso.
Hurricane Laura is taking aim at the Texas and Louisiana coastlines. The storm is expected to make landfall tomorrow or Thursday as a Category 3 hurricane. Whitney Wild has the latest on preparations and projections.
Hurricane Laura is gaining strength as it barrels through the Gulf Coast. Officials expect Laura to swell to a Category 3 storm by the time it makes landfall, either Wednesday night or Thursday morning.
The storm surge could be worse than Rita. That is a sobering thought.
We're now recommending a mandatory evacuation for all of Calcasieu Parish.
Portions of the Texas and Louisiana coastline now fall under a hurricane warning, and officials have issued mandatory evacuations for areas including Galveston, Texas. In Houston, evacuation boats and high water resources stand ready to manage Laura's wrath.
So this truck right here behind us can hold about 10 people, and it can go about through 30 inches of water.
The National Hurricane Center expects Laura to drop between 4 and 12 inches of rain beginning Wednesday night and extending through Saturday. Widespread flash and urban flooding remain a major concern.
Be very aware that you need to make sure that you are not near that, because it can easily sweep you away, causing you to lose your life.
Officials are warning Laura's power could prove deadly. As a tropical storm, Laura killed at least 9 people in the Caribbean and may bring storm surges of 7 to 11 feet along the coast. Whitney Wild, KPBS News.
Day one for the Republicans began with the formal nomination of the president and ended with calls to disavow the radical left. Now the RNC will shift focus to a new theme, land of opportunity. Nadia Romero has a preview.
On the first night of their convention, Republicans rallied behind President Trump and a second term for his America First platform.
Donald Trump has always put America first, and he has earned 4 more years as president.
A key challenge for Republicans on night 2, fighting back against the Democrats' narrative deriding the president's leadership style on the world stage.
This president has been disastrous in foreign policy. He's been doing foreign policy by tweet, catching his own generals off guard.
Making the case for the president's statesmanship, Mike Pompeo. In a controversial break from precedent, the Secretary of State is expected to make his endorsement and pre-recorded remarks from Jerusalem and tout the administration's success in the Middle East and around the world. The evening will also be a family affair, featuring 2 of the president's children, Eric and Tiffany Trump, and a much-anticipated address by First Lady Melania.
It's very authentic and it's going to come from the heart. So we're really excited for people to hear from her.
And what could be one of her only public campaign appearances, the First Lady is expected to offer a personal perspective.
Her speech will be definitely very uplifting and positive. And then I think she makes a really good case to the American people about why it's so important that her husband continue on as our president for the next 4 years.
In Washington, I'm Nadia Romero.
And we are carrying the PBS NewsHour coverage of the Republican National Convention on K1KPBS through Thursday. Kindergarten is supposed to be a magical time for children when they get a backpack, a lunchbox, and then they go off to school like big kids. But now parents and teachers across the region are staring down the challenge of introducing kids to school without actually having them in a physical classroom. And KPBS reporter Claire Tregesser tells us that is creating inequity from the very start of kids' school careers.
Maya Ramos and Kaya Kagasan spent the morning relaxing in the hot tub and then climbing out to eat fruit and cookies outside. This is where the new kindergartners at Benchley Weinberger Elementary in the San Carlos neighborhood will have their virtual kindergarten classes. Their moms, Nicole Ramos and Shafana Kagasan, formed a learning pod together and hired a private tutor to help them follow their online lessons. Kagasan says, in some ways, this will be better than if the kids were in normal kindergarten.
Maybe this is a way for us to be creative and reimagine the whole education process. So I'm excited about that. I feel like that's a rebirth of something. So maybe in all of this, there's something good that's coming out of it.
A few miles away in North Park, Dania Hernandez is facing a far different reality.
Just the unknown, just to not know what's going to happen.
She works full-time, and her daughter Jasmine will start kindergarten at Jefferson Elementary in North Park. Hernandez's plan is for her mother to stay with Jasmine and help her do her online lessons, but she's worried that won't work out well.
My mom will be there, but it's not the same thing as having a professional sit next to her and teach her and give her the 101. Even if the computer just goes in a sleep mode, you know, it's hard sometimes with somebody that doesn't have that experience. Then it's going to cause frustration, stress.
Ramos, whose kids are going to be in the pod with a private tutor, says she's keenly aware of the inequity the pandemic is creating.
I think the big challenge that we have in, like, what role do we play in sort of helping solve inequity is, as people who have, resources.
Regardless of their status, kindergartners and their families will arguably be impacted more than any other grade by online learning this fall. They have little to no experience in a regular school environment, let alone in a virtual space with the distractions of home. It won't be easy for teachers either.
Hi, everyone. Just wanted to go through the binder with you real quick.
Jana Wilson, who has taught kindergarten for most of her 21-year career in La Mesa, is planning a daily schedule with a live video call from 8 to 9 a.m., where she'll go over the calendar, read a story, and talk about the letter of the day.
At the beginning, I think we're being very ambitious in thinking that we're going to be on for an hour. It's going to be a very long time. But at the same time, I think our thought process is if we break up that hour in a way that includes some fun songs or activities or, okay, get up and stretch and jump around.
Still, Wilson acknowledges that parents or another adult are going to need to be with the kindergartners to help them with the crafts and activities, at least for the first 6 weeks. But of course, that's not an option for many families.
One kid obviously didn't have a parent in the room, so the little kid kept going like, here's my dinosaur. I want to tell you about my sister. And the teacher didn't know how to mute, My daughter had meltdowns. Like, she literally had 10 meltdowns yesterday.
Humaira Yusufi's daughter, Fatima, already started virtual kindergarten in San Marcos.
We can address challenges, but it's been really bad.
Now she's ready to pull her daughter out of school entirely.
I'm concerned that, this is going to give her more anxiety about school. Like the whole introduction to school is, is kindergarten. And I don't want her to have long-term anxiety about going to school.
She's toying with the idea of switching to homeschooling or having her daughter skip kindergarten completely. But there could be unintended consequences. If a large number of parents decide not to enroll their kindergartners in public schools, it would cause an enrollment dip and a corresponding drop in state funding to districts. Maureen McGee, a San Diego Unified spokeswoman, says the district won't have final enrollment numbers until October. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
The San Diego Blood Bank is putting out a call for more donations. High school and college blood drives would usually start this week. The blood bank says about 20% of donations comes from these events. You can make an appointment online at sandiegobloodbank.org, or you can call the number you see on your screen, 619-400-8251. Now for a recap of our top story. San Diego County supervisors are deciding how to spend their nearly $6.5 billion budget for the next fiscal year. Supervisor Nathan Fletcher proposed nearly $50 million in budget amendments that would come from the county's reserves. Nearly half of that money would go toward helping families pay rent. Local healthcare workers gathered in Oceanside today as part of a statewide rally to call for legislation to provide more personal protection equipment. The group is demanding healthcare and other essential workers have a stockpile of PPE due to the dangerous conditions of their jobs. Rallies were held in 11 other cities, including the state capital. And San Diego ocean temperatures are warming up. Sunday's reading off the Scripps Pier tied for the hottest on record at 79.5 degrees Fahrenheit. That record was set just 2 years ago. Oceanographers say average water temperatures have been increasing since the 1970s. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley. And by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.